Oh, no. What happened?
You have been defeated. It is time to find your corpse and resume the battle.
This feels very familiar. What is this? Who defeated me?
You have been bested by Tosialama, scourge of all who yearn.
Tosio, what? Who is he? She...
Some call Tosialama the real-life boss, tirelessly defending people from the pull of their hobbies.
What? That's ridiculous. How is that a thing?
I don't know, but you have been defeated by Tosialama 37 times in the last few weeks alone.
Oh, I need to get in game. Wait, can I just skip the corpse run?
Are you sure you want to suffer resurrection sickness to skip the boss fight and get back in the game?
Yes, of course. Wait, what are the effects of the resurrection sickness?
While playing, you will be 35% less available to your wife for couples activities, chores, and the to-do list.
Ooh, that's a lot.
And you will suffer a 20% reduction in productivity at work.
Wait, why? I don't play WoW at work much.
Let's attribute it to thinking about the podcast on a OneNote tab that you hide when your boss walks by.
Hey, how did you know that?
There is an alternative. You can get up to 25% of your wife time back by staying up late and playing when she is asleep.
Yeah, let's do that.
But you will suffer a 40% hit to alertness at work the next day. Furthermore, when you lose focus, your productivity will go down another 20% as you think about reporting on what you experienced in the game.
It seems like I can't win.
That is the will of the Titans.
Fine. Maybe it's time I dropped my sub anyway. Who needs the hassle of all these currencies and reputations and buggy patches and crazy storylines? I wonder if there's a new Animal Crossing out.
Wait. Do not be hasty in your resurrection choice. Have I not mentioned that there is a heroic tier for the content?
Heroic? I don't need anything more difficult to do. Oh my god.
I mean, there is a normal tier, and there is a new short story that is not a crazy story at all. Oh, and our most recent content update was bug-free.
I don't know. Is there a follower raid difficulty yet?
Silence! Maybe at BlizzCon. Now, make your choice and get along.
You have entered the Solo Queue, a monthly podcast about adventuring alone in the world of Warcraft. Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Gagne. Welcome to episode 41 of Solo Queue. Hey, just as I past me said a few minutes ago, this is a monthly podcast about playing the very social game of World of Warcraft, but alone. Casually wandering Azeroth in search of adventures. Thank you for taking the time to join me. If this is your first time in the queue, welcome. I'm Dave. I'm here for the next pile of your minutes to share my thoughts and experiences with you. So welcome back. It is July. It is past mid-July. And hey, we've hit an inflection point. No secret, the last couple of months, the last couple episodes, you have heard me in here struggling a bit to get in games, struggling to find time for things for various reasons. And I am so glad to say that things are turning around in so many ways. It's very good. I'm getting into the game more. I'm more excited to get into the game more. I'm excited to sit here and talk to you about the World of Warcraft. A bit of a resurrection, and kind of no surprise that the Midsummer Fire Festival had a lot to do with that. A lot of things coming into play this month. Schedule lightening up a bit, but my big to-do list of things that should be grabbing my time never really goes away, so I can't blame it all on that. Some of it's the content. The 12.0.7 patch is out. It is solid. Things to do. I can also say that listening to my friend Jason Lucas over on the Starting Zone, hearing him kind of report on how things are in the game and what's going on, that helped pull me out of my slump, whatever I was in. So thanks to Jason for that. And I started taking some of my own advice from the last episode. Hey, here's some things to do when things aren't grabbing you. And I've tried to do some of that myself. So, trying to get away from the do as I say, not as I do state of things. So a bit of a resurrection. This is very exciting. I'm very glad to be amping up the excitement as we get into the final 2 months before BlizzCon. There's a lot on the horizon here, both for me and for all of us, whether you're going to BlizzCon or not. Hey, there's news coming. We, in the next few episodes, are going to be talking about that, what might be coming, what we think is coming. So that's certainly the ramp up to BlizzCon. We have more big patches. We have more big story beats coming. We have a 12.1 that is coming down the line. That said, it felt like to me, and maybe this was before 12.0.7 came out, but it felt like to me there's a weird slowdown in the game. And maybe social media is just whatever. Maybe it's just the Twitters and the blue skies but it felt like people were having less conversations. And I know I was having less conversations. I have not been getting out there as much, but it felt odd. Even, people I know and follow and like, they would put things out and very minimal likes, very few comments. And I thought, wow, it's weird. It's weird out there. And I don't know, maybe it's just normal sort of midsummer. Everyone's doing everything else. People are paying a little less attention. And I think that's valid. If you're not tuning into the game as often, you're off doing stuff in the real world. Hey, why not? We all need ebbs and flows, right? But I do think that's starting to pick up. I do think even that is changing. It's certainly changing for me, which, hey, that's all I care about, right? We're starting this episode in Stormwind today. Why not? Hey, when I get into Midsummer Fire Festival, which I do know ended a couple weeks ago, that's okay. Start in Stormwind, or at least I should start in Stormwind. This time I think I just started by saying, oh, hey, there's bonfires around wherever I was in the world. I should start doing that. And then eventually remembered, aren't there like quests and things? We'll get to that when we get into what I've been into in the game. A little bit of an update. I thought I'd mention, a little while back, I mentioned all the big changes I made with keybinds and changing how I played the game. And sort of embracing the one button rotation, but figuring out how to work it into things. And I can say that big change has mostly stuck. Most of it is still there. I found that the single button rotation is great. I can now fight and eat ice cream at the same time. But it's not as easy as it sounds, because when I'm doing that, I'm pushing my one button rotation, which is, the attack rotation is W. So I'm pushing button with my left hand, but that means I have to eat with my right hand. And normally I'm eating with my left hand. So it is not as easy as it sounds. There's some skill. There is a skill level there that you might not expect. I did make one change. I did move the tab target back to tab. You may remember I told you my caps lock button was getting a lot of action. Yeah, it wasn't quite working. And I don't know what annoyed me more, that it didn't quite feel right. It wasn't quite in the right place. Or every time I would go into another, any document where I was typing, I was yelling into it, because more than 50% of the time it felt like the caps lock button was on. So for various reasons, I moved cycling through targets back to the tab button. Still getting used to that. It feels like there should be a button in between the two, and that's where my pinky wants to be. But alas, that is not how that works. Maybe I just need to program the single button onto my mouse, and I hadn't thought of that. I can just fight with a button on my mouse. I'm going to think about that. I can say that, I have been playing a fair amount of Druid lately, running around on some Druid characters. And for Druid, I kind of bounce back and forth. I can still be lazy and want to do the single button, but I know the rotation a bit. I have the rotation up there. And so banging around on the keys that I've set up, I still do that. But it's funny. It feels strange. My main in this expansion has been a hunter. So I have mostly used the one button rotation for the hunter. And now switching back to druids, like, oh yeah, I got to move my hand up a row, and I could do things over there. And so it's a lot of getting used to it. And I'm not spending 3-4 hours at a time in the game. I'm not getting kind of the muscle repetitions in there to make it all work and make it all smooth. So it's a little bit bumpy, but alas, I'm still having fun. So a little update on the keybinds. Let me know if you've made any keybindy changes to how you play. Maybe you've come up with something good. Maybe you have moved your one button somewhere that's even more convenient, and you can eat ice cream with your intended hand. I don't know. We have a nice show planned out. It might not be the longest. I don't know. It might be a little bit short. I say that, it'll probably end up 2 hours. Let's say 2 hours and 12 minutes. There you go. I'm going to give you my estimate here. Roughly 14 minutes in. Do I have 2 more hours of things to say? Yeah, probably. Who knows? Maybe even more, but they'll be editing, so. But I'm excited to get into this. Going to talk about what's in 12.0.7, what I've thought of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the 12.1 news, the upcoming major content update. We're going to talk a little bit about spoiling 12.1, and a little annoyed about that. And we're going to talk about storytelling. It's interesting. I had some pieces that were kind of floating out there in different places, and when I finally sat down to really gather all my notes, essentially in between episodes, I make a lot of notes. I just jam them into a list, and that list is this crazy pile of stuff. And at some point when I start planning the episode, I start to sort that crazy pile of stuff into piles. And when I start to put things together, I realize, I've got a bunch of stuff about storytelling in WoW. And so we're going to take a look at that. That's going to be the main topic today, actually. And a little video at the end that I saw that I want to talk about as well. That'll be our sort of side quest to wrap things up at the end. So So maybe this month will be a little bit more focused than some of the other episodes. We will see. If it's a little shorter, that's okay. It's kind of a good reflection of where life is at the height of the summer. But that said, very, very soon, I will be sitting down for a conversation with a Warcraft friend. That's going to be episode 42. And I'm going to be working on that probably as soon as this episode hits your podcast feed. So stay tuned for that. And hey, to get things going, let's poke into some of the news around World of Warcraft.
You bring news?
What news from the mainland?
Have you any news?
What is in the news for World of Warcraft here in the middle of July? Well, if it isn't 12.1 and it's not related to, I don't know, some of the stuff that I don't really pay attention to in the game, there's actually not a ton of news. As far as 12.1 goes, still no release date as far as I know, but come on. You really think they're not going to hit that 8-week target after releasing 12.0.7 both on time and in a pretty good state from the very start? No way. They're going to launch 12.1 on August 11th. I'm sticking with my prediction right on that 8-week schedule. So what is in 12.1? You've probably heard elsewhere. I'm going to cheat a little bit and grab a list of the description from Blizzard Watch. The continuation of both the story campaign and the Zul'Jan quest chain from 1207, which of course are leading us to the Coiled Isle, that foggy island off the coast. There will be a large new outdoor zone with its own new events, such as the Vaults of Atulatek and Cursed Fishing. So finding a way to kind of bring fishing back into the popular events. I don't know. That's going to be interesting. Of course, new 8-boss raid, the Venomous Abyss, and also a 3-boss dungeon called the Altar of Fangs. There will be 2 new delves and a new Nemesis delve, which is a good reminder that if you have not done your Nemesis delve, it's probably time to start thinking about that. You've got less than a month left, so a couple weeks. There will be a new type of instance. And I'm not going to lie, seeing this on in somebody's notes changed how I thought of it. They are layers. Now, I've heard of layers, and you may have as well on other shows and things. It was not until I grabbed this list to read that I realized it is spelled Lairs, not Layers. So the new system for world bosses is layers, as in where they live, not layers, as in what is still actually appropriate, because the whole idea behind layers, AIR, is that you're going to not just wander upon a world boss or not just join a massive group. You're going to be able to go and it will be instanced. It is not just something out in the world. It sounds like there's some good technical reasons for doing this as far as load on the servers and a big world boss event, a big group attacking a world boss and that dragging things down for other people in the same zone. So, or same shard, same whatever, however all of that works. That's why I thought layer made sense. You now are going to get into an instance. There are going to be different difficulties. We're starting to see difficulties show up. So I'd like to do the world boss on the easiest possible, please. That will be my request. That will be which layer I would like, which again fits with layer as well. That's why it made so much sense. Or you can do the harder modes and forget how many different levels are going to be. They're mythic world bosses. So choose your difficulty. I think that's great. I think that's a pretty cool flexibility. The one downside is it's going to, this is the other side of this coin every time, split up the player base. Now, on most realms, I think that's going to be fine. You know, every now and then I try and go do a world boss or some other event that needs people at a time in the week or a time in the day where no one's around to do it. And there have definitely been world bosses that I have not been able to kill in the week because I showed up, you know, a Monday morning or some weird time where everyone's already done it for the week. Not many people are playing, and I just miss out. This is going to exacerbate that because now you're going to have, you know, 2, 3, 4 layers, difficulties. Let's call them difficulties. And that's going to break up that player base even further. And again, on a big server, that's probably not going to be a big deal. But one thing I have found playing this expansion on my Horde Hunter, which I am playing on the Earthen Ring server, which is an RP server, and it is a server that has not been connected to other realms. So most of the realms out there now, you know, if you're on a small server, you're probably also connected to other servers, larger servers. You'll notice people who are, you know, not on your server, but they're in the game. You can see them. You're, you know, hanging out with them in the real world there. Not so on a hatful of RP servers. And I did that originally on purpose because I wanted dead servers, not dead servers. I wanted small servers that if I went to old world content, specifically the Mists of Pandaria bosses, world bosses, those would be dead zones. No one's going there. If you are on a busy zone, and I don't know if this is still true because it's been a few years since I've had to do this, but if you go to the Shaw of Anger on a big server, you're probably waiting for the spawn, and there's probably a group of people waiting for the spawn, and it'll come every 15 minutes. The reason I did the RP servers was no one was waiting. As soon as you came into the zone, the world boss would spawn and would be available. Like it's just sitting there waiting for somebody to come along. And you come by, hit it 3 times, kill it, and then it'll be 15 minutes. And if that is going to be how layers work on these small servers, unconnected servers, that's really going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem for the main character, the one that I'm playing right now for kind of all the new content. He may have a hard time getting groups. He may have a hard time finding, you know, it got to be in the game at the right time. You know, if there are X thousand players on that server and, you know, divide that up by 4, but not even evenly. Most people aren't going to go to the easiest thing. They're, you know, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. There could be a bad side to it. That's all I'm saying. I hope there's not. Okay. Also in the list, there are new quests coming for the Argentina. Let's see. Lots of player housing updates. We have the ability to save, to import and export blueprints, which will be, if I remember right, for rooms or for your whole house. We're going to be able to have pets in our house. That's going to be very exciting. And there should be some new endeavors coming. I don't know how many there are right now. It feels like there's 3. You know, having punched up the endeavor for, you know, every time someone in the solo queue Discord and guild says, hey, is there an endeavor? And I get into game and I feel like it's the same 3 every time. Maybe there's 4. It will be nice to freshen that up. And that's the list that I found. So check out blizzardwatch.com. Great source for news, WoW news, other game news as well. And of course, hey, check out their 2 Warcraft-related podcasts, Blizzard Watch and Lore Watch. Everybody over there is devoted to putting out good video game news. So please go check them out. Another 12.1 related feature is the Discord connection for guilds and communities. So essentially, Blizzard is recognizing that Discord is the head honcho as far as group communications and where people are gathering. And isn't it the truth, even in my little corner of the world, if you compare the solo queue Discord to the solo together guild chat, there's a lot more people chatting on Discord. So Blizzard is allowing you to integrate those things, and there will be a guild channel, a communities channel available for you in Discord. I will definitely be adding this to our little solo queue community because I feel like there are way too many ways and channels and platforms to have conversations. I just the other day sent a message to the Solo Together guild member Luch, who I will mention a little later in the show. And I was dumbfounded when I went to send a message and it was like, hey, send your first message. I was like, we've talked. We've traded many wonderful messages in a conversation, but I could not remember where we did that. And luckily she reminded me that it was on email. So we had traded lots of emails, but in game, out of game, Discord, Twitter, Blue Sky, email, stopping by the house. I guess, maybe not all of you can stop by the house. That's kind of reserved for Righteous Bandy and that Sky guy. But hey, you're all welcome if you give me a heads up. If you're wandering through Southern Maine, you just let me know. But this is going to clean that up, I think. Like, hey, go here, go to this one place. Even Patreon, I've had people say, oh, hey, I would have a conversation on Patreon, but I'd rather do it on Discord or I'd rather do it somewhere. And I get it. So yeah, Discord, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do this. We'll figure it out. Hopefully Blizzard's instructions are pretty clear, but the solo queue Discord will feature a guild and a community chat for those groups as well. And I do get it. If you don't love Discord, I get it. I went a lot of years not really liking it, and I still have parts of it I don't get and I still have problems with, but it does feel like a good place to have conversations. And if we can combine the conversations of, hey, I'm in game and I want to do something, anybody out there, I think that's great. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully it is a good tool to bring more of us solo players together, or at least as together as we collectively want to be. Last item in the news, at least in my roundup, on the literary side of things, the short story, The Bitter Truth, is out. As with recent shorts, you can go get the PDF version on the Blizzard media page, or you can check out the, for some reason, 3-part narrated version on YouTube. The Bitter Truth is written by Robert Brooks and narrated by two people, Gideon Emery as the voice of Lothramar, and Keston Jones as the voice of Chirundo the Grizzled, who is the war advisor to Zuljara. And perfect, because the story is a conversation between those two characters. In the wake of the announcement by Hagar in the 12.0.7 storyline. So it's interesting. I really like this story. I like how it just kind of slots in and is a thing for entertainment. The story features these two rivals, representatives of the Amani trolls and the Blood Elves, and they are recounting long ago battles and searching for answers about the cruelty of war and talking about responsibility and honor and all sorts of big, deep things like that. And like many of these stories, it has no bearing on the current game and your success in the live game. Like, it does not affect what you're doing. It doesn't help you, obviously no power, no anything granted to you. You can play the game without reading this. It is just depth. It is depth of characters. It adds some history and some depth and some understanding for us as to what the conflict is between these two groups. It explores this ancient rivalry, but through two current characters based on both their memories, but also what they've heard. The art in the PDF it's pretty straightforward. It's informative. It's notable, not terribly unique, but it does the job. It definitely helps tell the story. And, if you're in the PDF, there's 18 pages of the PDF that are images and pictures. In the YouTube versions, that same artwork gets some slight animation to go along with the narration and the background music. So, it's not just one of those static, there's nothing going on in the YouTube version. It uses the images to help tell the story. So it's worth, watching. The entire PDF is 33 pages, but only 12 of them have text on them. It is relatively short. It's a relatively short conversation. The audio version is only 21 minutes, and that's across 3 videos. And that includes like them introducing themselves each time and throwing a little thing at the end. So this is a relatively short story. That said, if you appreciate little details, if you appreciate just fleshing out, it's definitely worth a listen or a read. It does not take long to read. It does not take long to listen to. Throw it on the background while you're doing something else. But yeah, I think it's worth checking out. The Bitter Truth, the latest short story from Blizzard. And that is going to do it for the news for the solo world for July. Let's get out of Stormwind and start talking about what I have been doing in the World of Warcraft now that I am coming back.
And what have you done lately?
Well, I think the idea of a resurrection in the game is fitting that it starts with fire. And one of the big things that brought me back was one of my favorite holidays on the Azerothian calendar, and that is the Midsummer Fire Festival. Maybe second only to the Lunar Festival, but I really love getting out into the Fire Fest. I think it was just a couple of years ago, and I described it on the podcast in early episodes, but getting out there kind of for the first time and really diving into it. I have to say, I almost missed this year. Again, playing was not on my radar, but hearing some news from the starting zone about new quest line, new stuff going on, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to get back in there. And I almost missed a lot of stuff, and I didn't get through a lot of stuff. But thankfully, those guys filled me in, and I did get into game, and I decided, okay, I'm going to try and use my Worgen druid to work on all the new stuff. And this year there was an additional whole bunch of content added to Firefest. So normally, there's the put out the bonfires and light your bonfires in all the zones. Always a great way to level because each of those gives you experience points. It is, I say it's passive, but you end up paying a lot of attention to fly from place to place. So, at least for me, it's not completely zone out time, but it is, there's not a lot of thinking that goes on, and it is a nice change of pace. There are the dailies like throwing the torches and other stuff in the capital cities. There is the daily boss to the Yahoon boss. Lots of stuff, but this year they added some story to it, some background, some celebration of different ways that different races celebrate Fire Festival, but also where those things came from, and of course Dark Iron Dwarves having to do with part of it. And I like how they did this. So I took my druid Kalia, who started level 82, and hopped in and realized, oh, hey, there's a new way to do all of these things. And that is, you go from zone to zone, and in each of the zones, you're going to get a little bit of a story. You're going to get the narrator for that part. There's basically 4, I kind of call them quest lines, but not really. They're kind of just story flight lines, because you fly from zone to zone. First, well, not first, but there is Southern Eastern Kingdoms, Northern Eastern Kingdoms, Southern Kalimdor, Northern Kalimdor. And in those 4 zones, you get one narrator telling you a bit of the story from each of the places. The activity that you're doing is interesting. Here's a little bit from the first one that I did in Southern Eastern Kingdoms. So leaving from Stormwind.
Though the dwarven festivals of fire were celebrated by all clans in the ages before the War of Three Hammers, the Dark Iron clan paid a heavy toll for summoning the Fire Lord.
And so at the end of each of these, you get to a place where you have to fly through the blossoms. The blossoms that are floating up in the air. Okay. I don't mind the blossom catching thing. It's a little bit slow. Some of them were like, hey, get 20 of these. That took a little while. And yes, some of them had the, it was 3 at a time or whatever. It is starting to feel like an overused mechanic. We've got a couple world quests that are essentially that, fly through the things. Now the entire thing was fly through the things. I didn't mind it. Again, it's kind of passive. You're there for the story. You're listening. You're getting the interaction. The Blossom thing, I think it could have been 10 at the most at each stop, and whoop-de-doo. Like, how did they decide, oh, this one's definitely a 15, this one's a 20 for sure? That didn't seem terribly meaningful, especially after you've done all 4 of the zones and you've caught how many blossoms at that point. What I did like was in between each of essentially the stops on this quest trail are blue trails in the sky that let you know, hey, here's, once I figured that out, I was like, oh, wait, what the hell is this? And why does it make noise when I'm flying through it? I think this is important. And then I realized, oh, yeah, this is taking me to the next zone. Where before I was just, look at the map, the little yellow thing on the screen says, hey, your next quest is 1,000 yards this way or whatever, in the next zone. And then I realized, oh, wait, these trails in the sky are bringing me from quest to quest, from stop to stop. That's really cool. I liked that. And I wonder, talking about overdoing things, maybe don't overdo it, but would this be useful for some other aspects of the game? Maybe, any questing that goes back into time, which this was essentially, even though the questing itself was not part of the story. Maybe it's good for lore walking. There's been some times where, you're doing the lore walking, you're like, I don't know where to go. I'm in this modern world, but I'm in a story from long ago, and some of the quests are far apart. This would be a great addition to lore walking, I think. Now, I finally figured out that the river of, the Sky River is actually useful. And because, what am I flying around doing? Normal flying. Because, dynamic flying, I literally can't remember. It is dynamic flying now, right? It annoys me. I don't like it. It's better now with the changes they made, but I still don't do it. But the river didn't do anything for me. It was just showing me where to go. And, it's a little slow. And at some point I was like, oh man, I know I have like a half hour, and then I forget, my wife and I were going somewhere and I had something to do. I'm like, I need to go a little faster. I'm going to land on a mountain, stop, change flight styles, to dynamic flying. And we'll do the rest of this dynamic flying. And I realized the other real benefit of the Sky River is when you're in the Sky River, you don't need to do any of your flying abilities. It moves you at max speed. I think I have that right. You get in the slipstream essentially, and it's going to carry you. And that was really cool. I think that's true. If it's not true, whatever. But that was my experience with that. And that was pretty neat. I can tell you that, when I was doing normal flying, there were a couple times where I was like, wow, this really is slow. Oh, I guess I was doing it in dynamic flying at that time. I was like, wow, this is really slow. Why isn't this working? And I realized I was going the wrong way. It only maxes your speed if you're going the right way. And it wasn't super easy to tell. It makes a noise when you're going the right way, the shushing, whatever. And it wasn't shushing. I'm like, And then I realized, I'm back at the place I did. So, okay, whatever. So I did make the switch to dynamic flying. But then I found myself kind of focusing on the speed and maybe paying a little less attention to when they were doing the talking head, giving me the story. So, that is part of the argument for me of making things go too fast doesn't always benefit me as far as enjoying the game. So, that's on my mind when I make that decision. Overall, I really liked that whole system. I think the questing could be, I don't know. I get it. This isn't lore walking. This isn't, hey, go back and act through the actual stuff. On a level, I have no problem with Blizzard saying, okay, we want to put out new content. We want to add to the Firefest or this holiday or that holiday, but we don't want to make new quests and new all of that. We'd rather put that energy into actual, content, new content. I have no problem with that. I wonder if there's a different busy work way to do busy work than the flying through the blossoms. I guess that was the only thing. It's like, okay, this is fine, but yeah. I only got into the daily boss a couple times. I did not get any of the fancy whatevers. I bought some cosmetics. I did get my druid from level 82 up to 85. That was nice. On the whole, yeah, I wish I'd been in more time. I wish I had realized the timing of it. I think I thought I had another week. And then when I realized, oh my God, it ends. Oh yeah, it was July 4th. It was July 4th holiday and we had to get somewhere. I was like, oh, shoot. I'm not going to have time. Anyway, hey, let's, for this July month.
Interestiana pint?
Choose wisely.
Let's celebrate the drink of the month by celebrating the Midsummer Fire Festival, which means Fiery Festival Brew is our drink of the month. Sometimes you gotta fight your dry, fiery thirst with a fiery, wet brew. I don't know. I'm not sure how to sell that, but hey, there it is. The Fiery Festival Brew and the Firefest that helped kind of, like I said, resurrect me out of the fire and back into the game is really exciting. Other things I've been up to. I did, as I said, take my own advice, and one of the things was, hey, jump into old content. And I don't know what it is. Dragon Soul, I guess the fact that it has two, not one, but two big mounts that drop. And I have been running Dragon Soul off and on now for a few years. After a few bumps and whatever, I figured out the whole dance on the back of the dragon. It's not hard. It's great on a druid, I guess, which I always run on a druid. So that has been sort of a go-to. Now that I've, conquered Ice Crown Citadel, I don't need to go there anymore. it's Dragon Soul. And so every now and then, I just head on to my druid, troll druid. She is at level 80. And she is just parked outside. She's right in the Caverns of Time, just hanging out. Finishes a run, disenchants everything, sells everything, ships a few BOEs off, and there we go. Back at it the next week or whenever I kind of wander around to it. And again, that was a nice way to kind of get back with something very familiar, no stress. It can be completely mindless, running around, whacking those bosses. And yeah, it's a way to be in game and not have to worry about, oh, where do I go for this quest line? What's this? How does this interact? How do I get my gear up to this whatever? The other aspect of WoW that I have been playing will be, a little surprising given the name of the podcast, but I have goals around group content. Whew, I know, it's rare. But have you seen the mounts? So, and to be honest, the raid mount, do the raid the 4 times, I don't even actually know what that mount looks like. I don't know what it is, and I should do this for you, but I'm not gonna. Look it up and see what it is, because I don't know. When they announced it, hey, do the new raid, Sporefall. Is that it? Sporefall. Do that 4 times, and you get an egg that grows, and boop, pop, you get a new mount. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. What the heck? I'm gonna do that. And I am happy to tell you I am 3 weeks in, and in this next reset, I'll hop in there and I will have it. I think other people may have it. I think it's been out for 5 weeks or something, so you could already have it if you've been doing this. I know I missed a week early on. So with reset, I'll be hopping in there and doing that one more time. And the other group mount thing is, of course, the Timewalking, the Turbulent Timeways. They have that fantastic blue whatever proto-drake that looks fabulous. And for this time, it's 6 weeks of Timewalking, but you only need to do 4. So do any of those 4 to get the buff, to do the thing, and you will get that fabulous mount. And I thought, yep, I'm going to do that too. And I believe after reset is week 4, so I will get that this week as well. For that one, I've been running my OG main, my Night Elf Druid, to get her leveled up, because she did not do main story content for a couple expansions in a row now, and that's okay. But her assignment is Harandar. Like, she is questing in Harandar and leveling there. She has risen up to 85 through a handful of dungeons, enough to keep the buff going, and maybe a couple extras, and a few quests here and there in Harandar. But she's up to 85 already. Timewalking is beneficial. By the time you hear this, if you haven't started the Timewalking, I think you'll be out of weeks. I think there are only 3 more weeks. And so hopefully you've done at least 1. But if you're more concerned just about leveling, Timewalking, it has amped up the experience, and you can do a lot of leveling in these dungeons. It's fun when you get a decent group, and this happened to me again. I know I've mentioned it the last time Timewalking was around. It was new to me then. You finish a dungeon, and then you're immediately queued into another one because, I don't know, magic. Somebody in the group just said, yep, let's keep going. And that happened a couple times. I think I got, on a week that I only needed 1 to do the buff, the thing, just said, hey, want to do it again? I thought, yeah, okay, yeah. And I did 2 extra dungeons because, I don't know, the group was fine. There was a week where we started, and first pull, first group, first room, whatever it was, everything came to a stop. And I'm not used to playing with people, so I don't think too look in the chat. No one chats with me. There's no chat that's worth it. I happened to look over and somebody said, oh, hey, the tank needs a minute. And somebody else was like, yeah, cool. Because I was like, wait, why are we all standing here? Usually people are just, yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go. And so it was nice. We waited. It was not long. It was, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes, which, sitting around can feel like forever. But everyone was super patient, and we got in and kept going. I think that might have been a group that did keep going. I think that was week 1 when I did that. Now, I have to say, there are signs in the universe that I should just not be doing group activities. I swear, weird stuff happens to me. At the very start of this, the first week, the first time I hopped in, I was queued for Timewalking, and I was flying around Harandar, collecting herbs and collecting those moths to just pass the time. And I noticed one of those spyglass icons. Clearly I had not yet climbed, so hopped on top of the hill, clicked the spyglass. I honestly don't know what the point of these is. I mean, I don't remember. Is there any achievement? Is there anything for doing these? I mean, it's nice to get a nice 360, panoramic view, but I could do that myself. I guess it makes me slow down and look around. But anyway, I guess I wish it would give me something other than if I just looked myself. Like, give me some, I don't know, annotated something. Hey, point out it could be like when you climb the top of a mountain in a state park or national park or something, and it's got this horizon. It says, hey, here's point such and such here, and a lighthouse there, and this mountain over here. That would be kind of cool if it add some value to that process, because I can spin myself in a circle. Maybe not slowly, but I could work on it. Anyway, right in the middle of the slow panoramic twirl, the dungeon finder sound trumpeted out. And I was like, okay. I had to wait a couple seconds because, when you do that, your whole screen goes blank and you're like, the majesty of the horizon. Isn't it beautiful? David Attenborough talking in your head. So I waited, it finished, and then the thing pops in. I click accept to hop in. And I don't even know what dungeon I was in. That I don't really know. I don't pay attention to such things. 2 things caught my attention. First, when I first walked in, it was announced that I was the leader of the dungeon group. And, I don't know that means much in a time-walking dungeon, but I was certainly chuckling. I should lead no one. I mean, I didn't even know what dungeon we were in. I probably had not done it before, I don't think. Honestly, I don't even know what dungeon it was, but I was the leader, so great. Yay. The second thing that caught my attention was that I couldn't move. I was hitting buttons. I was hitting my movement keys. Could not move. I had no abilities. Very confused. I did a / reload. That didn't change anything. I did notice at the very start, I guess observation number 3 that I had was one party member literally turned, faced me, and said hello. And I thought that was really nice. The other 3 were already running off and killing things, and this person turned, to talk to their fearless leader, because I was the leader of the group. The other 3 just ran off. So it was weird. I could move my camera around, and the game was active. Like I was getting experience points pouring in from the hard work of my group. So I could see them on the map. Things are moving. I could, again, move my camera around, but literally nothing was working. And so I put a message, vaguely remembered how to put a message into the group message thing, dungeon group chat, to say that I was literally useless and I was going to hop out. And somebody responded, probably my faithful and friendly second in command said, no problem, good luck. And upon leaving, I returned, got out of the group, returned to Herondar to my spyglass vantage point, only to discover that I was still not able to move. Thought, okay, this is not good. I guess I will hearth out of here, which took me back to Dornegal, which meant, I really need to update my Hearthstone. That was not helpful. I arrived at the inn in Dornegal and observed 2 more things. One of them was new, one of them was not. The one that was new was the deserter buff, because I had quit my group. I had a 30-minute timeout for abandoning as fearless leader, I abandoned my people. That was a bummer. Second thing I noticed was I still could not move. So it's very clear to me that the little spyglass panorama mechanic had sort of captured me, put me into a different state of the game, and then literally never let go of me. It was very, very odd. I did quit the entire game and log back in, and that did the trick. And that also helped kill another minute or so of the deserter buff time. So, yay. Wandered over to the Dornegal trading post to check out July's, goods. No lines, no crowds over in Dornegal. And, so killed some time shopping. And then I was able, again, after a half hour, able to hop into the queue and get started. So that was the very first Timewalking dungeon. Just these signs that I should not. They don't want me. They don't want me. They want me to stay solo. I did, as I said, turn on damage meters. And as I was going through some of this group content, I did turn on damage meters as I was doing all this group content. At some point I saw it was in my UI, but not turned on. So I hopped in and turned it on. I was not because I care about my numbers, because this druid was way under geared. Level, started at level 80, 82. I forget where she started, but super low. But I was curious relative to others. Like, I'm expecting to be last, terrible, whatever. The healer and I are duking it out for, last place. That was not the case. In most of the Timewalking dungeons that I ran, I was usually the second highest damage as a feral druid. As a feral druid who occasionally was hitting the one button, sometimes just fumbling through the rotation, and not well, because it's not, I kind of know it, but I'm out of practice. I'm not sure, honestly, which one was doing more damage, to be completely honest with you. But I was usually second, sometimes third, in most of these dungeons. And, okay, great. Timewalking, I know things scale, there's some groovy stuff going on, what have you. Okay. How about the raid? Here's my main character, Beastmaster Hunter, which, I don't know. Is it good this season? Is it bad? Whatever. I don't play it well, and I'm using the one button rotation. Okay, here's a raid. I'm expecting to be, I figured I'd have to make my damage meter taller to find myself. And that was not the case either. I've done 3 raids, the Sporefall raid. Actually, I've done more because I thought, oh, hey, I've done a raid. Now, does that get me a thing in the whatchamacallit, the Great Vault? No. You need to do 2 bosses to get a Great Vault slot. Okay, well, I'll hop into the other single boss raid and do that. And so I did that a couple times as well. So in the last 3 weeks, I've done 5 raids. I've never been lower than 9th on the damage meter. And usually I'm in the 6 or 7 range, almost every time. well, actually all of those. In all of those 5 raids, my gear level score is 244, 245 in that area. I'm not well geared, relative to Myth Plus people. Now, granted, this is LFR, so I don't know, what to make of that. But how on earth am I 6th place in the damage meters in a group of 20 in a raid I don't know, in a rotation that I actually don't really know the rotation. I literally just whack the button. I know what's going on. I have played Beast Mastery before one button, but I'm not thinking about it. It's just literally one button. What are people doing? What are people? Why am I the one carrying people, doing the damage? What is going on? I don't know. That was my group experience and one more to go. One more dungeon, one more raid, and I probably wash my hands of group content for a little while and go back to delving all by myself. A couple more things in the, what I've done. I'm really liking the fact that the Omnium Folio has a catch-up built into it. I know I missed the first week, and I was like, oh crap, I'm a week behind. And in week 5, I was on week 4. And I think at some point I noticed something, or maybe I saw something, but I thought, oh wait, I wonder if I can do more than one in a week. And you can. So I did week 4, went out, don't even remember what it was, came back, turned in the thing, and boom, week 5's quest is right there. So I was able to do week 4 and week 5 at the same day, catch up, get to the end of that. That system was fine. It was fine. A lot of times it's doing stuff you're normally going to be doing anyway, so sure. I somehow used a nebulous void core, and I got a bonus roll out of it, and I don't even know how that system works. I think the void cores come from the raid things that I've been doing. Talk about just accidentally bumping into stuff. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't pay attention. If somebody says void cores in another show, I stop paying attention. Yeah, at the end of the tier 8 delve, my highest one this season, I was very excited. It said, hey, bonus roll. I was like, oh, sure. I don't know. And the item I got was actually an upgrade, which was very exciting. So there you go. The last thing I have done in the game in the past month or so is the 12.0.7 storyline, which came out, July 7th, after, a week after the patch itself. And that will bring us to our main topic.
Let's get down to business.
The main topic for this episode is storytelling in WoW. And yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a broad topic. There's a lot that goes into the story of World of Warcraft. And what I want to focus in on is not the story itself. That, I think, is a whole different discussion. And frankly, one that's really difficult. Do you like the story? Then you like the story. And if you don't like the story, if you don't like the direction of the story, then yeah. Storytelling is a little bit different. And I want to talk about how Blizzard delivers the story that they've decided to tell. Again, like it or not, set that aside for the moment. Perhaps the most important thing to remember in all of this is the very basic truth that World of Warcraft is an MMO. And it is difficult to tell a story in an MMO. Now, I'm not an expert. I haven't played 17 different MMOs. I'm not comparing things. But logic tells us that if you've got a game where literally millions of people are in there, they are on different timelines, different play styles, different pacing through the content, it's going to be difficult to do two things. One, provide a consistent story inside of the game. And two, to do so in a way that doesn't clash with basically marketing efforts and testing and spoilers and all of that stuff. And to be quite honest with you, the thing that really drove me crazy, and this is the sort of the start of this being a topic, was the WoW cast that came out back in June, on June 18th. Blizzard did an announcement video of the Curse of Ulatek and talking about 12.1. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. And here's why. 2 days earlier, on June 16th, 12.0.7 launched. Revelations with all sorts of new systems and, all sorts of new whatever it was pretty beefy for a .7 patch. And no doubt, after the .5 patch, I think a lot of people were worried about how good the quality was going to be. We dodged that bullet. 12.0.7 launched without any public bugs, big, backlash, anything. I think everyone had good things to say about it. Part of the delivery was things were going to get rolled out a little bit in pieces. That's Tuesday, June 16th. On Thursday, June 18th, the WoW cast for the Curse of Ulatek is put out, and it starts talking about the story connections to 12.1. And the first thing that is said is in 12.0.7, Zul'Jan is looking for a weapon. But what the hell? You, Blizzard, are literally spoiling your own content, because the story part of 12.0.7 did not come out until July 7th, 2 weeks later. So 2 weeks before, or just under 2 weeks before the 12.0.7 story is publicly available, meaning not on the PTR, but is in the live game, you have walked over that story and told me what's happening in it, and then leapfrogged forward into what's coming next in 12.1. And I went ballistic. I'm checking my notes as I'm saying this, and I can't read half of them because they are not very happy. They're very angry notes. And hey, in the grand scheme of things, does it matter to me? Does it matter to the player if little bits of story about the coming patch, or the coming, hour quest line or whatever it took you to do the 12.0.7 Zul'Jan quest line, if those things are spoiled, does it ruin your game? Probably not. And admittedly, when I got around to playing the storyline, did I feel like it was all ruined? No. But that doesn't mean there's not a weird problem here. The fact that the marketing for your next thing, 8 weeks away, undoubtedly, right, is going to walk over the story that hasn't even come out yet. It is not publicly available. So if you are, if you are someone who does not do the PTR, you do not look for spoilers, but you got to go to Wowhead to look something up, or you like to be online, you're probably going to have your experience spoiled. Like, it's going to give things away that you may not want to know. And that's really unfortunate. And what it told me, the conclusion I drew, is this: Blizzard doesn't have a great respect for its own story. And that hurt to come to that realization, because I don't want it to be true. I want the story to be really important to the MMO, because, selfishly, I don't need a couple of the M's in the MMO. I don't care about the group thing and all of the stuff. Story is, I'm not going to say it's the most important thing to me, but it's pretty big. I want the story, I want the story to be better than a lot of people say, oh, the story of Warcraft is weak and watered down and whatever. Again, that can be debatable, but the storytelling, like how it's delivered, it's already on such a razor thin margin because it's an MMO. It's really difficult to tell a story in an MMO. And so if you're just going to let marketing kind of walk over the story and you're going to spoil things because, hey, we need to get our WoWcast out at this date and that's the release cycle for the next patch, and you don't care that it just gives things away, that's disappointing. That told me it just was it could be a mess up, could be a mix up, poor communication. But ultimately, it makes it seem like Blizzard just doesn't treat its story and its storytelling with enough respect. And I'll say this. I've had in the back of my head for quite a while now this worry that when I go to BlizzCon, when we all go to BlizzCon and we sit there, Blizzard's going to roll out, and I think they will, a proper cinematic for the Last Titan because, hey, it's the next expansion and here's our big, not even annual anymore, our big occasional meeting. We've got to use this as a launching point. And I agree that's the opportunity. You've got the stage, you've got the attention, be it people in the room or people at home. But boy, if that, we're going to be in the middle of 12.1. We will not be in 12.1.5 when BlizzCon arrives. And if 13.0 is essentially, just launched with a cinematic, how is that not going to give away the plans for 12.1.5, 12.2, 2.5, 2.7, like whatever else is out there? I don't know. I mean, the other side of that is you put out a really vague cinematic that doesn't spoil anything, but what are you announcing? Like, I don't know. That seems like a horrible problem to have. And I'm worried. And now with this little kerfluffle, and maybe no one else cares. It's possible. I haven't heard a lot of people complaining about this, a few here and there, but not as much as I would have thought. But I'm now double worried that that's what we're going to get. And I think that's a problem. And it moves the needle of where Blizzard's attention is towards we are a game of systems. We are a game of, features. We are not a storytelling game. And I don't want that to be true. And, so again, checking my notes, I wrote this in the moment that night and I was so angry. It literally says, let me read this. I don't play PTRs. I don't listen to data mining and spoilers until I can get into the game and play the content. And here is the literal Blizzard publicity machine telling me the story before it is even released. Actual budgeted, planned, marketed spoilers. I am pissed, and I'm going to watch Ted Lasso tonight instead of playing WoW. And that's true. I was going to get in game. I watched the Curse of Ulatek thing, and I was so angry. I shut my computer down and went and watched Ted Lasso with my wife. The marketing kind of had the opposite effect. Now, it didn't, because really, what's the marketing for? It's to make money. Have I already paid my sub? Yes. Am I going to buy the next expansion? Yes. Well, unless they keep this up, but yes. So, God, why push it? Why play with things like that? And then, almost the stick in the eye after that. YouTube suggested the next video was Taliesin and Evitel's 12.1 tier sets ranked. We're 2 days in on 12.0.7 and the next season's tier sets are ranked. Like, I don't understand. it's already 8 weeks. It's already too fast by almost everyone's opinion. Why do I need to know the ranking of the tier sets? Like, who is that for? Why? Okay, that's what set all of this off. Now, the next thing that popped into my radar was a video on YouTube's by Discordian Kitty. Discordian Kitty, someone who I became aware of on, I believe, Twitter, maybe Blue Sky, probably Twitter. I don't remember. All mashes in together in my brain. And at some point I realized Discordian Kitty also made video content. And so every now and then I'll check one of those out. Well, the video that caught my attention, let's see if I can find the date. I don't remember what the date is, but it is called The Inherent Problems with World of Warcraft's Storytelling and How to Enjoy It Anyway.
Is World of Warcraft's story really so bad? In my view, no, not really. As I said, it's not exactly Shakespeare, but that was hardly ever the expectation anyway. But I do think something has gone wrong with World of Warcraft's storytelling, and that these problems aren't going to be easy. In fact, some of them might even be impossible to fix.
That's the start of Discordian Kitty's premise in the video, which runs about 40 minutes long. It's a pretty in-depth discussion, and she walks through things that are a problem for the storytelling, and some of them are obvious. She mentions the PTR cycle and the way that sites like Wowhead will data mine and then report out what they find. And, you know, hey, that can make it really difficult to ignore spoilers. Again, if you're someone just headed to, oh, I need a thing on Wowhead, or if you just want to peruse, you know, I think the people who want to avoid spoilers know that they cannot wander Twitter, especially, and maybe Blue Sky, like some of these sites you just can't go on in the days leading up to, or probably even worse, the couple days after a patch launches, content launches, and you haven't had a chance to get to it. Oh boy, that can be rough. She mentions that occasionally there are clumsy or just bad plot lines that get into the PTR. So written by Blizzard, put onto the PTR for testing, and feedback coming back from players having an influence on that. And in the video, this is going to go both ways. That in this case, there was the example she uses is a very insensitive plot line that had to do with some of the events that happened to Alexstrasza in the past. And I won't go into that any further. Feel free to check it out. But it was put out by Blizzard, written by Blizzard in a very insensitive way. But it was the PTR testers, players, that were the ones that acted as the quality control to say, hey, whoa, this is really, really bad. And it was slightly changed. The content, the questing stayed, but the wording of things and the focus of things was tweaked. So there are benefits to PTR testing. PTR testing of endgame content. I mean, how are you going to test endgame content without some spoilers? That's stuff that just exists. And again, this gets back to, this is an MMO. This is on the rails in that the patch launches for everybody on a day. The raid launches for everybody on a day. Not, oh, I just picked this game up off the shelf. I'm going to check it out and try it. You play that, you install it and play it on your own time scale. So that's an inherent problem with the MMO live action game. Got it. She mentions an example of there are times when Blizzard has to throw things overboard or make really big changes. And the first example was Warlords of Draenor. And, I know I only started playing in the kind of the end of Warlords, so none of this is something I experienced, but I often hear Warlords trotted out as all the patches and all the stuff that they cut, all the systems that they cut and threw overboard. That's too bad. what doesn't get talked about, and she goes into this a little bit, is throwing out the storylines and how things were supposed to go. That also got scrapped and changed. And I never really thought about that in that way. Better example, more recent example, Harandar. It is essentially accepted truth that the Harnir and the Harandar zone was meant to be part of the War Within, not Midnight. She goes through a little bit of the evidence, things like Bran Bronzebeard being mentioned as the Delve Companion, despite the fact that he is not the Delve Companion in Midnight, and other data mining things or other changes. It seems like pretty settled fact, at least among the player base, and maybe we'll know, maybe we'll never know. But Harandar was clearly intended for the War Within. And, I've been in this show before to say, hey, yeah, that changed. All right, I'm rolling with it. It seems to kind of work, whatever. But how much work goes into changing storyline? And if you say, hey, please go write a story, tell this story, point. Oh, we're going to take the middle of your story out and we're going to move it 17 chapters later. Now rewrite it. That's an ugly process. That is an ugly process. And, when it's put that way, I certainly feel for the people who, in some ways, pay a little bit more attention to the story and see those skips and those jumps and those inconsistencies more than I do. I'm a little bit more passive and accepting of the story because I want to enjoy it. I want to just take it in, but I also want it to be good. And so I feel for those people who say that, because Harandar being ripped out and moved certainly changes things. She talks about how a full, rumor has it, a full villain arc was planned for Sylvanas, but the business people stepped in to say, hey, you can't kill Sylvanas. She's a gold mine for us. She makes us money. People like her. You do what you want, but you got to keep her. And again, good storytelling, often has an arc, and sometimes people need to go away. And so again, hey, Warcraft, this reminds us, this is not a book. This is not a novel we're all taking in. Warcraft isn't even a game. It is a business model that relies on giving you enough to keep subscribing and keep buying expansions. And so the storytelling and the story, all of that stuff has to be good enough. But it's definitely not among the top priorities when they're designing World of Warcraft. And that's too bad. She also brings up my arch nemesis, story mode. And kudos, she calls it one of the biggest failures of Blizzard's storytelling, and no doubt. And now, I don't experience this. I haven't done the raids other than the single person raids or the story mode raid. So I don't know what I've missed. She mentions that story mode absolutely fails the player in Voidspire, because what you're missing from a story point of view, you're missing the progression of the story. I'll let Discordia and Kitty explain it from here.
During the Voidspire, a major and important theme of Midnight's story, the way that the light is beginning to overwhelm its followers and turn them into zealots, culminates in the fight against the light-blinded Vanguard, where characters who we have been questing with and have gotten to know and who we have seen become more and more extremist finally go over the edge and we have to fight them. This is a hugely important story beat with a lot of lead up. It's not the whole story of Midnight, but it is a very important and impactful part of it. But if all you experienced was story mode, you won't even know about it.
And that's the very thing I've been saying for years about story mode. It doesn't give you the story. And so not all of the story is being made available to all of the players, all of whom paid the same amount of money to get the same features and the same expansions and the same playtime. And that's unfortunate. She mentions the converse to that, that some raids feature no story progression and then save everything for the final boss, and usually specifically for the final cinematic after you drop the boss. And that might sound attractive and certainly easy for story mode to handle, but it also makes the whole raid as a whole less interesting. So the suggestion is, hey, story mode needs to be more like follower dungeons. Preach. Yeah. She gives a suggestion that Blizzard, when going through the story, needs to listen less to player feedback than they do currently. And that might sound a little counter to her earlier point about PTR testers stopping something horrible from going live. But here's the thing. That's the exception. Most of the player feedback from the PTR and the stories is backlash to the story itself. I don't like my race being left out or made the bad guy or whatever that is. And no matter what direction the story goes in, someone's going to be upset. There's going to be backlash. And the response to that is to write a story in the way that minimizes backlash. And that doesn't make necessarily for good writing, right? Not only that, it doesn't run counter to her point that, well, hey, the PTR can stop that horrible writing from going live, because it's not the PTR's job. If you're putting something out onto PTR, I would argue, in a way, you have launched it. You've made it public. You've put it in front of players if they want it. You've put it in front of the media, who are all going to play PTR and report and spoil and what have you. It's out there. The reason we know about the horrible quest line that she mentions is it got put out. It doesn't save you from doing something stupid. It just means you weren't your quality control. So what it points out is that's missing from the story process, the story building process. Essentially, you can have QA for raid testing and systems and currencies. You also need it for story. You need internal editors that are going to catch bad storylines, bad writing, and try and ensure the quality stays high. And it sounds like that's missing. I have no data. I haven't pored over who got laid off in which round of layoffs to know, but it sounds like a logical conclusion. In the end, Discordian Kitty offers up 5 takeaways, 5 kind of things that should happen. First, keep the story off the PTR as much as possible. And again, that's tricky. How do you make generic everything and put it out there and get the testing you need? PTR is for testing systems, making sure when you attack something, you can kill it, not in 1 second, but also not in 100 hours. Somewhere in the middle is the right number. But do you have to put the story? And if more effort can go into not putting that story out there, you're going to have less spoiling. Let go of writing. Number 2 is let go of writing to avoid negative player feedback. You're never going to avoid it. Write a good story. Number 3, story mode needs to be fixed. Hallelujah. I'm with you. # follower raids. Number 4, if story nuance is going to be left out, then it needs to actually show up in local questing. And I know this isn't something I mentioned, but she made the example of the Sunreaver's storyline, which makes reference to the reasons for a very big decision in one of the campaign questing. But it doesn't actually, none of that was told in the local questing. And to her point, she said it feels like a missed opportunity where some of the Eversong Woods local questing was a bit lackluster. Well, here's the campaign storyline, just tossing something out that the player never participated in. but it's a very big decision. That could have been in the local story questing. This was in response to interview with Taliesin and Nevitel with Paul Cubitt, who said, hey, we can't do nuance in the campaign questing. And that makes some sense. Maybe, maybe it's an arguable point, but I'll take him on his word for that, hey, there's a lot going on. It's an MMO. There is all the races, all the factions, all the things. Nuance in the one story on the rails, that's a little tricky. But the local questing is where that can happen, where the nuance, where the flavor, that stuff can be there. And it should. Don't gloss over things. Use your local questing. And the fifth takeaway, the last one, and this one's for us, the players. We need to know and accept that WoW's storytelling will never be as good as we might hope. It's never going to be as good as a good book, for example. We need to temper our expectations as to what's going to, how well the story is going to be told. And she says that has never not been true in this game. It's never been a great story delivery. So don't pretend that it is otherwise. And I think that's a great point. We do have to temper our expectations. Which brings me back to me. Like, what do I think of all of this? And what do I think of the 12.0 story? 12.0.7 story. One thing I liked the art style in the flashback of the in-game cinematics when Hagar is telling us about the trolls and the elves and the ancient history. I really liked that art style. Just setting that out there. Now, I hate to say this, but I'm not sure I have a lot else that I really like about the 12.0.7 story. And I may need to go look at it again. I may need to go do it again. But here's one knock on it. It isn't terribly interactive. And if you listen to the Starting Zone, you heard them talk about, Jason and Spencer talk about how there's a lot of kind of passive sitting at your computer listening and reading text boxes and listening to Stay a While and Listens. And then there's an in-game cinematic, and it doesn't involve the player. It doesn't do you a lot. It doesn't get you involved a lot. And that comes back down to this central question of how to tell a story in World of Warcraft. Because, they weren't wrong when they said that. I knew that ahead of time. I was like, okay, all right, well, now I need to know. Now I know that I need to spend a few minutes and focus in on this. And I did. I picked a night and dove in. And yeah, it kind of was a lot of reading and listening. And, okay, it's story. But this is an attention span world, right? And I don't have the best attention span, so it needs to be mixed up. It needs to be, kind of bouncing around a little bit and delivering story with it, instead of, literally the beginning of the questing and the story was, hey, go talk to these 6 people and listen to them, and when you're done, go to the next one. Then do that 4 more times after you've done all 6 people and you've just listened to them talk and you've read their boxes. It's like, okay, this is kind of a lot. Let me put it this way. Okay. One of the things I hated in school was history class. And, if this is not your first episode, I'm a history teacher now, 1,000 years later. I can't do history classes that are just lists of stuff and boring stuff. Here's stuff. It has to be more interesting. It has to be more interactive. Even into college, I remember college history classes. I didn't take many, but a couple of them I did. I was like, this is terrible. It's just talking. And part of the reason I became a history teacher was to not teach like that. And it's more work, let me tell you, but trying to make things interesting, trying to make the stories pop more than just the facts of stuff. That's a challenge. And again, it's a challenge in an MMO, and I don't have the answer to that. I'm not claiming, oh, well, if Blizzard just did it this way, it would be great. I don't know the answer, and I want to know the answer. I want the story to shine inside of this game of many, many systems, for sure. How to tell a story in WoW. Does there need to be a separate lane for non-story people? Like, it almost like take what we're doing now, make it into 2 lanes, make one of them faster and one of them slower. One of them is optional. Well, they're both optional, I guess. But the fast lane is optional. If you just want to get to, get geared up, get in, get with your group, do your thing. No knock on that. But why are we slowing you down by trying to pump you full of story? Likewise, why are we kind of half-assing that story to not drag anybody down too much? I don't know. Maybe that's something that can be considered. And they've done a good job of highlighting, hey, this is the story. This is the campaign thing. These are the things you have to do. And then, okay, local questing you don't have to do. But is that the only answer to this? I don't know. I don't think so. Something else that I don't quite understand. It feels like this was just 2 stories, not just one. And I probably need to go back and redo this, although I'm loath to do it. Just telling you what I think of it. In the beginning, and if you have not done this content, I'm going to spoil a couple things, just a couple, not a lot. This is not crazy. So if you want to skip ahead a few minutes, that's fine. But in the beginning, Hagar, down in Harandar, the Haranir, I forget her position, but she's an important person in the Haranir society. She's talking about this claim that the Haranir are the source for the elves and the trolls. Now, okay, in a way, that makes sense. In visually, like, okay, yeah, those are kind of half troll, half elf things. Sure, maybe they both come from that. But don't we know already that that's not how it worked? Don't we know that trolls were trolls? They are the kind of the OG race, and then dark trolls split off and became night elves, and night elves became more elves. Like, it doesn't the family tree run that way? And so how is this different, and why is it different? And let me pause on that, because the second part of this story was Zul'Jan taking that information and not being happy about it, and then going on and moving towards, I guess I won't spoil the rest of this, but moving towards 12.1, moving towards the island of cursed whatevers that we're going to, and the curse of Ulatek and all of this, moving us forward. But they felt like 2 very different stories with just this thin connection in between. That was, I felt like, not great storytelling. Almost like a barbell with big story thing on one end, thin thing to connect them, and then a big thing on the other end. Let's come back to that idea of the Haranir as a source of trolls and elves. So I spent a couple of minutes looking at Chronicle 1 and trying to find the lore bits that tell us this. And that is where I got the dark trolls turning to elves and, all that stuff. And, there was a conversation somewhere in line that I caught a little bit of. Frankly, I'm not in Twitter and Blue Sky as much as I used to be, which is probably a good thing. But, I'm missing some of these conversations, but somebody mentions the whole unreliable narrator bit. That, that use of that tool in story writing. Oh, well, hey, here's an unreliable narrator. And so, grain of salt, what they say might not be true. And we have heard for years now, hey, the Chronicles, they're not a history book. Well, they are, but, and I know this from teaching. History is not the same as truth. That's for sure. History is told from a perspective. And, as a history teacher, especially as a teacher of ancient history, I know that this is true. But there's a really big but here. This perspective thing, this unreliable narrator thing, I think it needs to be used judiciously in a fantasy world. But it just cannot be the rule like it is in real world history. In real world history, if the loser of a war writes a history and the winner of a war writes a history, you probably can guess which one's going to end up in the history books 50 years later, right? And so we see this over and over and over again. And it's not like the loser is necessarily going to have the truth either. They're all from perspective. And that is true. But this is a video game. Spoilers, by the way. This is a video game. I love this world. We love this world. We play the game because this is a defined universe. It's a cast of characters. It's a progression of events, relatively defined lore and history. And, every now and then, players get awful grumpy when there are retcons, when there are changes to that story that retroactively contradict what we all previously understood. Does that happen in history? Yes, it does. It actually happens in real world history. Every now and then you discover something like, oh, what we thought is not the truth. We found a new thing that is closer to the truth. Apparently, there's more evidence for the new thing than there was for what we previously understood. Yes. But in video games, we know sometimes those retcons come out of convenience. Oh, wouldn't it be great if the story was this? Let's just kind of mush things around and change it. And yeah, this happened. That can happen because we're writing the story. We're writing, it's not history where things actually happen. It's all fiction. But part of what we like is the fiction is told to us and we take it and accept it, right? If there is an important story beat that requires us to see Azeroth in a different way, that can happen, but it should only happen rarely, and it should really just serve the story. The storytellers cannot just toss out information and then just change it, adjust it with the excuse of, oh, well, that was the perspective of the Titans. Now we're getting the perspective of the Haranir / trolls, elves, what have you. Those are all new versions. And ultimately, the use of an unreliable narrator is kind of like an elastic band that you can pull it too far. You can stretch it too far. As players, I think most of us want a relatively stable foundation of lore to rest upon. You want to know the past. Even those, even players who have a casual relationship to the lore, I think they want this as well. For example, if you play whatever race, doesn't matter, and that's your character, and you chose your character because you like the story of their race and their vibe or their racial abilities, whatever it is, you like them. You level up your character, you raid, you run some Myth Plus, when you're done, you're like, I'm bouncing back, play some League or some Red Dead Redemption or whatever it is the recent hotness. I have no idea. But then you always come back to WoW. It's just in your rotation. You love coming back to Azeroth. Even people who don't hit every single stay a while and listen, they don't want their character's basic racial history to be a lie just because an in-game cinematic that they skipped in a 0.7 patch changed everything. That seems too much. Like, I might be out on a limb here, and I have no evidence for this beyond observations of playing World of Warcraft for 11 years, but I think most players want a lore that is relatively stable and that adds new branches and new information to that relatively stable base. If we're using a building analogy, there should be a foundation, and you build on it. You don't get halfway up to the 3rd floor and change the foundation. That's not good for buildings. It might not be good for stories, and it might not be good for player bases, or at least the happiness of the player bases. I think they need to stay away from big changes, especially if you keep using the excuse, oh, well, that thing that you understood for 10, 20 years, 30 years, if we're going back into some Warcraft stuff, that thing you thought you knew, that's just from their perspective. We found a new scroll in the game that we made up that changes everything. No, you can only do that once or twice before the player starts saying, oh, come on, what are you doing? This is a game. There are no actual titans. There are no actual trolls. There are no actual elves. You made these changes, you, the creators of the game. And I think that can be frustrating. And I felt like for me, this started teetering towards that edge of, you're making me not like that. Do better with storytelling. I think there are things that they can improve. You know, I kind of famously play both factions. I play every race. I play everything. I have characters everywhere because I like the stories from all the places. I want to see how these characters level, what their stories are in their villages and this and that, what both sides of this story are doing, the Horde and the Alliance. So why repeatedly does the Horde seem to disappear from the story for large periods of time? I hear that complaint from so many people in the social medias, and sometimes, okay, whatever. But you know what? If you hear it long enough and you hear it from enough people, you got to think there's something to it. So why does the Horde just disappear? Why is it that we get very heavy focus on one side and then very minimal focus from the other? I think the 2-faction structure makes for a very difficult story environment. If there's the expectation that there will never be a winner and a loser. And isn't that one of the most basic elements of storytelling? Like, hey, here's a story. It's got a conflict, which, if you don't have a conflict, do you really have a story? So here's a story with a conflict. It's never going to be resolved. You're going to keep just back and forthing. And again, if you start listening to player feedback of why is my side the loser, and you choose to never make anyone the loser, do you still have a conflict? And as much as I'm not one of those, put the war in Warcraft, there does need to be a conflict for it to be a good story. Now, the conflict can be, it doesn't have to be these 2 factions, but there does have to be some conflict. Having that 2-faction structure, the expectation of balance in your experience as a player, regardless of which faction, that makes it very hard too. Like, you cannot have one side be noticeably better than the other for any real period of time. Now, better could mean a lot of things. It could mean that side's more statistically powerful. Those are the correct people to play. It also could mean better represented, better storytelling, better what have you. Because ultimately, people will shift to one side or the other. Half the people will get grumpy and either quit or what have you. It's going to be unstable for the game. This 2-faction structure, I think, I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere, but I kind of think it should. So that it can open up more avenues of storytelling and more avenues to keep people in the game. The last thing that's on my mind about storytelling is the whole PTR and data mining. And I know that's always going to be there, and it's always going to have potential for revealing, but I really do think this quick update cycle, this 8-week cycle, is hurting in this way. The marketing needs to move on. The marketing is real. You have a game. It doesn't make any money if no one plays it. You've got to market your game. And if that market cycle is going to walk over the story, if the PTR and the data mining are going to spoil your story, I don't know. I don't know how you have a story-based game. And maybe I'm growing tired of a game of systems, and maybe I want a more story-based game. And the little joke about, hey, does Animal Crossing have a new version out? I mean, I love me some Animal Crossing. The takeaway on storytelling, perhaps we need to lower our collective expectations for story in Azeroth. Is that kind of the answer? I mean, that feels like a shame, because this world is wonderful. It's fleshed out. It's detailed. It has history. It has multiple histories. It has so much detail. So many characters. It would be a shame if that withers on the vine because of all of these issues that I've mentioned. And, I think we could agree to disagree on some things, but I think there are real issues with the storytelling. And the storytelling is at the heart. It's kind of the spine of this whole thing. And hey, can you live without a spine? Yeah, maybe raiding is the heart, and Mythic Plus dungeons are the lungs, and delves are the arms. I don't know, just making this up on the fly. But without a spine to hold it all together, you're just playing, I've heard it said, playing a spreadsheet, basically. Roll dice, get a number, get the loot, do the thing, the number goes up. Like, you're just doing that. And, maybe some people, that's what they want. But the story makes all of this attractive. And I hope that they're not going to just ignore the story enough that it starts to wither. So here's my hope. I have a business proposal for Blizzard, because I know they're definitely still listening nearly 2 hours in. Hey, business is the language of Blizzard, right? So I'm giving a business proposal. My hope is that the solution for all of these problems will be announced at BlizzCon. Because, and it might be a little late to get started on this if you haven't, but whatever. Wouldn't it be nice to have some type of separate game in a different genre that is set in Azeroth, right? That would allow some of the pressure to come off of the story in Warcraft. People who want to dive in, and let's just say me, who wants to dive into a single player game, who wants to get lost in this world, come up with a different type of game. Some sort of open world game that is going to let story be at the forefront. Pacing can be different. It doesn't have to be the shared experience on a timeline. I'm not a game designer. I don't even play many games. I don't know what this would look like, but boy, oh boy, if nothing else, you've got this great universe. It's the same thing people say about StarCraft. You've got this great game, this great universe, this great, system of stuff and characters and races and all that stuff. What are you doing with it? It's just sitting there. Maybe people have high hopes, and I know people have high hopes about BlizzCons, but there's hopes for a StarCraft game out there. Well, I'm hoping for an Azeroth game. It's not a prediction, by the way. That is a hope, and those are two different things. I know that was a bit of a long conversation, and maybe even a bit of a downer, and I don't want it to be. I certainly don't want to finish on a downer. So, our side quest.
How deep are you willing to delve?
Kind of finish things off is response to another video. And this is not a bigger topic. It's just, I saw this video that was shared with me by Luch in the Solo Q Discord. And she posted a video called, "Are You Hiding in WoW or Healing in It?" And it's a video put out by Salty Nips. I hope you're okay, Salty Nips. I don't know what else to say about Salty Nips. And I probably shouldn't say anything about Salty Nips. But I really appreciated this video. It's about 9 minutes long. And the central question is, what are you doing as a solo player in WoW? And the solo player thing wasn't in the title, but it should be, because this was geared at people who are playing alone. What are you doing in there? It's interesting because it's a discussion of the solo experience from someone who's not entirely of the solo world. And that's kind of the premise. So it's a little bit different from how I play the game. He has been a solo player before. He has been a solo player before and has played this way, but he doesn't come to it as the only way. Like, he has played in group content. He has played in a social way. And, hey, I suppose even I have strayed a bit from this solo experience, right? I just recounted my group achievements earlier in the show. But I'm not that far away. And so, one of the interesting points he made, why do people play solo? This difference between solitude and loneliness. And talking about how solitude isn't the absence of others. It is the presence of yourself entirely. Like, you are just solely focused on you. And that actually rings very true for me. It's not that I don't want anyone else in the game. Now, again, if you gave me the game as a single player, I would play it. But that's not my only goal. Like, I'm not trying to get rid of everybody else. I don't mind their presence in the game. I'm just focused on me and playing. And I don't like when things get in the way of that focus. But, one of the points he makes is World of Warcraft is big enough to get lost in. Like, it literally is, I'm going to say physically, but, it's fictional, but you know what I mean. The game is massive. You can wander into zones. I mentioned it earlier today. If you're on the right server, even if you're on a big server, there are places you can go. You're not going to see anybody. No one's there. And if you just need, to get away from it all and disappear, you can. You can. He makes the point that this game is solitude with company at the edges. So there's people around. You can find those people if you need to. And that's a great point. Ultimately, he's sort of saying, like, hey, are you hiding from something by playing alone? Or are you just resting and taking some time for yourself, taking time away from others? And, on some level, he also gets into, it's the players who have lost in WoW. The game has changed. The game has changed in ways that they don't like anymore. Their guild is gone. Their friends have moved on. Whatever it is, they're just in there going through the motions, but they can't play in the same way. So are you resting or are you hiding? And, some of this stuff, it kind of resonated with me. It was an interesting pondering of the solo experience. And, hey, I'm talking to a lot of people who play this game solo. The video, like I said, is worth a listen. You really just need the audio. The video of the actual imagery in the video is just random wandering through various zones. It is completely unconnected to the topic being discussed. So pop it in and just listen. You don't need to see it. I do think it's a little bit focused on the people who are trying to escape the social scene, but are likely to return to it at some point. He does make a point that WoW is uniquely suited for a solo playstyle for those looking to escape. And that may be true, but I don't agree with the larger point that it is a game suited for solo players in general. Those are two different things. If you want to go farm, random ore in a random zone and just whatever zone out, absolutely. But that's not a meaningful player experience if you're like, I want to be able to play this game solo with as much of an experience as group players. Maybe not the same exact experience, obviously, but I want to have access to as much of the game and experience as much of the game as group players. And that may not be true. That just may not be true. There have been improvements, follower dungeons and all the things that they're working on, but there's still room for improvement. And here it all just kind of takes me back to the irony of this podcast and this community. Here I am talking to you about playing solo and sharing stories and cheering each other on. And we are now in the Discord and in the guild in a community. So, in the past, hey, my time away from the game would have been like a tree falling in the woods. No one to hear it, right? And now I've got you guys kicking the doors down, looking for an episode every 2 weeks or so. Just kidding. That's just what it feels like inside of my head. It's not actually, no one's doing that. You guys have been very patient and very supportive. Everybody I've come in contact, whether it's in messages or, what have you, has been fantastic and patient. And I guess that's just me needing to say thank you for that, and thank you for sticking with me. Past few months have been weird and rocky in a few ways. Various conflicts, various events, various moods, things in my head have kept me out of the game, more so in the last couple months than really any time in the last 6 years or so, like pre-COVID. I don't remember the last time I had sort of a down bit in the game, and it's made me sad. I'm not gonna lie. And so being sad about not being in the game actually contributed to me then also not getting back in the game. Kind of a spiral. And a couple people have reached out with some very encouraging words, and that has been great. It helped to lift some of the pressure off that, as I just mentioned, I manufacture in my own mind. Like I generate that pressure all by myself. And, hey, I'm working actively on dealing with some of that stuff. Long term, like that's a kind of long-term goal. But more to the point, more to the moment, on top of it all, the spell has kind of been broken a bit. I've been getting in the game. I've been moving characters around. Eye levels are rising. New levels are being earned. Progress in a lot of places. And so that breaks the spiral. That breaks the sad. In fact, just thinking about it now, I'm like, crap, I got to edit all this. I really just kind of want to hop back in the game. And so in that way, it kind of does feel like a resurrection. This Midsummer event and this middle of the literal summer feels like a coming back to life in Azeroth for me. And I would say it's the perfect time. Except, boy, a lot of days it's unbearably hot up here in the Solo Q headquarters at the top of my house. And so, in some ways, this resurrection is a bit like, a phoenix rising out of fiery chaos. It has been warm for this resurrection. Well, that seems like enough out of me for this month, at least for this part of the month. I need to actually hop in and go through my characters and record my monthly inventory of gold and levels. I normally do that on the 15th of the month, and so I'm a few days late. Big thank yous to Spencer and Jason at the Starting Zone, the folks at Blizzard Watch, Discordian Kitty, and Salty Nips for making great content that I either used or commented on in this episode. Remember that all the music and sound you hear in the show is the work of the amazing people at Blizzard. # Don't Play Muted. The music bookending the show is, of course, by my real friends in the Real Doom Metal band Ogre. Thank you to everyone who made this episode possible. My lovely and supportive wife, the good folks at Podbean who host Solo Q, and to the contributing Patreon supporters of Solo Q. Huge thanks to all of you. Andrew, Righteous Bandy, That Sky Guy, Sin, thank you. Snake of Old Dune, John, Scott, Jeru, Raven, Graybeard, Pasta Matt, Luch. Big thanks to Luch, who is now handling the neighborhood endeavors, and to Rack, all of you. They have supported the show at patreon.com/soloqwow. And hey, a quick occasional thanks to all those free members: Max, Eddie Bear, Friends of Wampus, Sean, Kuro, Aiden Nakron, Guardian Sandy, Alice, Don, Camille, Eric Wednesday, Case, TJ, Denethar, The Champs, Michelle, Donald, Agro Management, Brian, William, and welcome, Uaihu. Boy, I hope I said that right. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're getting podcasts. Come on, hit that subscribe button. Comments, ratings, reviews, all of that, especially on Apple and Spotify, that helps to generate some conversation and get some attention and algorithms and what have you. So anything you can do there helps out. And if you want actual conversation, head to the Discord channel for Solo Q. Look us up, or the show notes have a linky link to get into the Discord. If you want to contact me in any way, shape, or form, SOLOQUEUEWOW at Gmail, Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even Threads. I've been on Threads. I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. There's a lot to do with the news in Maine lately, but this is a different podcast. Hey, thanks for hanging out. Make sure you get your Timewalking dungeons done and get that mount. And we can talk all about it next time we hop into the Solo Queue. And sneak preview, the next time will be soon, and I won't be alone. And I've dropped many hints throughout this episode of who it is, so stay tuned. I will see you out there.